Hi, I'm Gemma and today I'm going to share with you a recipe for one of my favourite fast, delicious dinners. It's also one of my kids' favourite things. So it's really versatile. It's a great way of learning about flavour and there's some great techniques in here that I think you're going to really like for all sorts of different recipes that you make from now on. It's a Thai stir-fried pork. You can use chicken, you can use beef, you can use pork. The thing that might be different from some stir fries you might have made before is this uses ground or minced meat rather than strips or pieces of meat. And I'm going to show you the best way to get maximum flavour out of that with minimum effort. I'm also going to help you understand a little bit more about the importance of balancing flavours, and I'm going to go through that as I cook. This whole recipe, you can be done in about 15 minutes if you're fast, 20 minutes if you're a slow chopper, and it's a really good versatile one, so I hope you like it. So I'm going to start cooking my meat first, and I'm going to use a nice big pan. This is a scan pan, frying pan. You want a nice non-stick pan, something that you can stir fry in, so something with a bit of a good side is helpful. If you've got a wok, you can use that. Most important thing is get it super, super hot, so on your highest heat, get it nice and hot, and then I'm going to put in some coconut oil, and coconut oil is very suitably Thai for a dish like this. But if you wanted to, you can use any oil. So in America, you could use a canola oil. In the UK, you could use rapeseed oil. So my oil's going to get nice and hot. Now, this is the really important bit. I am going to, move this, make a little hamburger out of my meat, which might sound odd. This is the ground pork. You could use ground chicken. You could use ground turkey. If you're going to use ground or minced chicken or turkey, make sure you use the thigh meat because the breast meat is too dry and it'll make this dish too dry. So I'm going to, instead of just lumping it in, I'm going to actually flatten it out so I increase the surface area of the meat. So all I do is I've got my meat on some kitchen parchment paper. I'm going to fold it over and I'm going to flatten it until you get a really nice big pancake or hamburger shape. Just going to make sure my oil is spread around, and then in one deft motion, hopefully, I'm going to flip the meat in. Hopefully, I said. That doesn't always work. So if it doesn't work, use a spatula to flatten it out as much as you can. You want to hear that sizzle. Now what's happening is I'm increasing the surface area of the meat, and that means there's much more area to get nice and brown. It's going to cook faster and I don't have to stand over it stirring it. A lot of recipes will tell you to stand now and keep breaking the meat up, and that means your meat is cooked, but you end up with very grey, tasteless meat. So you'll hear that sizzle. That's a really nice level of heat. This is going to cook for about 5 minutes, so while it cooks, I'm going to chop my vegetables. So first thing, I'm going to chop my peppers, and the way I do peppers is, first of all, don't use green peppers, they taste disgusting. Use orange or yellow ones. Chop the end off, pull out the green bit, throw that away. Chop round here, pull out the seeds, smack it on the bum to get rid of any extra seeds, and then chop it through the middle. And then I'm just going to slice it into strips. You could do it in smaller pieces if you've got children or people that you're cooking for who are fussy about certain shapes, and I've been there, I know how it works. Strips are nice. So strips, I find it easier if you cut with the shiny bit of the pepper down. So this is kind of what you're left with. Chop this bit as well, you don't want to throw that away. A sharp knife really does help. And I'm going to do a red pepper as well. So again, get rid of the green bit. Chop through the 3 little connection bits. Pull that out. Smack it on the bum. There we go. Now, if you're a slow chopper, you could chop your veggies before you start cooking. but I'm always in a rush, so I think the amount of time the meat takes to cook is the perfect amount of time for me to get chopping, so it saves time on the overall recipe. There we go, so that's all done. Now look at my meat. It's nothing, it's just starting to go brown up the sides, and that shows you that it's cooking. But we're not going to do anything yet. I've not moved it, I've not turned it, because if I move it now, I'm going to start putting cold air underneath, and that's going to stop my meat from going lovely and caramelised and how I want it to be. Okay, next thing I'm going to do my onion. So this is a red onion. I really like the sweetness you get from red onions, so I'm going to chop both ends off. And I'm going to chop it into half moons, which is basically the easiest way of chopping onions. So the skin comes off pretty easily. And then I'm going to chop it in half. So you'll see this is the kind of cut side. I'm going to put that down to the board. And then I'm just going to do the thinnest pieces I can. Once you get to that sort of point, just turn it over and cut through there, and you're left with half moons. Oops. Still not moving the meat. In my cooking classes, people always start panicking at this stage, everything's going to burn. But I'm using my sense of smell, and my sense of smell is telling me that it just is smelling delicious, it's not burning at all. So, that's the rest of the onion. I'm going to set that aside. Now, for the first time, I'm going to start looking at my meat. And you can see, once you start turning it over, you're getting this really nice brown caramelised flavour. And that's where your flavour is coming from. So you can see, this is what we're after. And now, you can start breaking it up with the side of the spatula. It's not cooked all the way through, but don't panic, because we're going to be cooking it with the veggies in for a bit longer. And you want to break it up into little sort of thumbnail sized pieces. This is what we're getting to. You don't want it totally broken up, but that's good. Now I'm still on a high heat. So now I'm going to add my onions and my peppers, and everything's going to start stir frying. Give it a stir. As you stir, try and break up the onions. That means they'll cook a bit faster and you won't be left with big lumps of onion. There we go. Now while that cooks, again on a high heat, I'm going to keep telling you about the high heat because I know people get scared of it. I'm going to chop my garlic. So I'm going to put a couple of cloves of garlic into this. So chop each end off, so chop, chop, squish with the flat of a knife, and then the skin just falls right off. Again, chop, chop, squish. Every time I teach this in class, people always ask me, is it okay to use the chopped garlic out of the jar? And I always say no, because I do think there are some corners worth cutting, but chopped garlic, really, it just doesn't taste very good. So you want the freshness and the health benefits of real garlic. So I want to slice it as thin as I can. When you're chopping garlic, always try and find a flat edge, so don't worry about turning it around as you chop. If you try to chop your garlic on that bit, it's going to wobble around, so always put it on the flat edge. Now if you love garlic, feel free to put more in. If you don't, put less in. So there's our sliced garlic, sort of pieces like that. The next thing I'm going to do is chop the chilli. Now if I'm making this for my kids and me, I tend to add the chilli at the table because they're not huge fans of chilli. But today I'm going to add it. So this is a Thai chilli. I'm just going to chop it, seeds and all. Now a lot of recipes will tell you to take the seeds out, but the seeds are where all the heat is. So because I'm lazy, instead of taking the seeds out, I just use half the amount of chilli, and then you still get the same amount of heat. You don't have to worry about taking out the seeds and getting chili all over your fingers. So that's everything nearly chopped. I'm going to give everything a stir. The onion and the peppers are starting to wilt. You still want them to have some crunch. At this stage you could add some green beans, you could add some asparagus. I'm keeping it quite simple today. So the onion, you can see, is still quite hard, so I'm going to let that cook for another couple of minutes. Now the pork is totally cooked through, there's no signs of pinkness. That's the way to know. So if you're nervous, just pick up a piece and just break it up, and if there's any pinkness in the middle, you'll know it's not cooked, but this is perfectly cooked. Can you hear that sizzle? That's the noise you want to hear. I'm going to add my garlic. I'm not going to add my chili now, I'm going to leave that and add it at the table because this is my kids' dinner. So the garlic, a lot of recipes tell you to add garlic at the same time as your onion. The problem is that garlic has a much higher sugar content than onion. So all that happens is your garlic burns and doesn't taste very good. And garlic only really needs about a minute to cook at this sort of temperature in this kind of dish. So we are nearly there. That was pretty quick, wasn't it? The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up some basil. Now basil is, just going to turn the heat down a little bit. When you're using basil, use the stalks and all, and be really generous. So when you're using the stalks, hold it together, chop the stalks very finely so you don't end up with eating big chunks of stalk. And then as you get to the leaf, you can just chop a bit more broadly. Think of basil in this dish as a really delicious green vegetable rather than as a herb. So you can use loads of it, and it's going to bring loads of lovely freshness to the finished dish. So I can turn the heat off this now. Let me show you what it looks like. So the onion is the bit you're really looking for the most. So the onion now has got nice and floppy and golden. The peppers have still got a bit of crunch, but again have got a bit more floppy. As we know, the meat is definitely cooked. So now I'm going to start the real work, which is playing with the flavours. And these couple of minutes you're going to spend seasoning everything are going to transform how your finished dish tastes. So first things first, I'm going to put my basil in. Now the heat of the pan, even though this is now off the heat of the pan is going to make that basil wilt, but look how gorgeous this looks. Yum. So that's going to start wilting down, and now I'm going to add my flavours. So there's 5 flavours to remember: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami. They're the 5 flavours that your mouth can recognise. And if you want your food to taste good, you need to make sure that those 5 flavours are kind of ticked off in your finished dish. So it's a little habit to get into, but once you start doing it, you'll start to understand how chefs season their food and why certain recipes have certain ingredients in them. So if you look at this already, you'll see that our peppers and our onions have added a bit of sweetness. I might add a little bit of brown sugar or coconut sugar once I've added all the other seasonings, just to balance out the sweetness. But the first big seasoning I'm going to add is lime. Very Thai. So whenever you're using lime, and this is a big tip, so remember this one, even if a recipe tells you to use the juice, always use the zest as well. So I'm going to zest in with my microplane. When you're zesting, don't do this, because then you end up with loads of the white pith in, which is really bitter. You just want that, so it's like one zest and turn, one zest and turn. And if you don't have a microplane zester, it's one of my desert island pieces of kitchen equipment. I take it with me everywhere I go because I love it so much, it's so useful. And if you're paying all that money for citrus, like lime or lemon, you want to use the zest, otherwise you're throwing half the flavour away. So, zest has gone in. I'm going to chop it in half and juice it. Again, I love my juicer. Whatever juicer you have will work. I'm going to add the lime in stages. So I'm going to do half the lime, half the total amount of lime, and then taste it and add more as I need it. I often just add wedges of lime to the table, and then everyone can just give it that final hit of freshness, because the acidity or the sourness really gets lost over time and the heat gets rid of it. So you kind of want to add it right at the end of cooking. So the lime's gone in. I'm going to add some salt now and some umami flavour. So the saltiness I'm going to add is a bit of fish sauce, Thai fish sauce. Don't worry, the finished dish is not going to taste of fish, but this gives it that real Thai flavour. The next thing I'm going to add is some tamari or soy sauce. Now tamari is basically like soy sauce, but it's gluten-free. So if you're gluten-free, then it's worth getting tamari instead of soy. Again, this adds some saltiness. What the soy and the fish sauce both add is umami. So umami is that very delicious savoury flavour that you get from Parmesan cheese, tomato paste, soy sauce, porcini mushrooms, crispy bacon. It gives you that really savoury flavour and almost like a base note in your food. So let's recap our flavours. So we've got sweet from the peppers and the onions, salty from the fish sauce and the soy sauce, sour from the lime juice, bitter from the lime zest, and umami from the soy sauce and the fish sauce. Sounds weird, but once you get into it, you'll start to understand. So, really important thing now is I'm going to taste it. And when I'm tasting it, I'm trying to work out, are all those flavours in balance? Is it tasting good? If it isn't, what am I going to add more of? So, make sure you get a bit of everything. Okay, I think this needs a tiny bit of sweetness. So I'm going to use a little tiny bit of brown sugar. If you've got coconut sugar, you could add that. Not too much. And the reason I'm adding sweetness is because when I was tasting that, I was tasting a lot of salt and savoury flavour, and I just needed to lift it up a little bit with some sweetness. And it definitely needs some more lime. So I'm going to add some more lime. Apart from that, I think we're good to go. Another taste. So every time you add more flavourings, give it another taste. I'm not using salt or pepper in this. The salt is coming from the soy sauce and the fish sauce, and the pepper is coming from the chilli. So again, have another taste. Perfect. So here's the finished dish. I love this over rice, it's great with noodles, sometimes we just have it over broccoli, but it's so easy. I think if you can take the lessons from this of how to brown your meat and how to balance your flavours and start thinking about that whatever you're cooking, it's going to really transform how things taste. So that's the finished dish. I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, the whole recipe's on my website. You can find everything at yousaytomatocooking.com. There's a recipes section on there that's got this in, as well as tons of other recipes. And make sure you follow me on Facebook and Instagram so that you see loads of the recipes and tips that I share. I hope this has been useful. Let me know what you think, and I can't wait to see pictures of what you make. Thank you.